Hello all and welcome back to the SRP Picks YouTube channel here as we discuss the upcoming Workday Charity Open, which will be taking place at Murfield Village in Dublin, Ohio. Last week we obviously had an up and down week at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. It was down 2 units, I think our final count was. A lot of our tournament long picks didn't do as well as what we did actually during the tournament, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But we were able to recoup a lot of the stuff that we made projection-wise pre-tournament. We talked a lot about last week how the top of DraftKings lineups were going to have a problem coming into last week. And once again, when we go through the summary of the picks that we made, that is going to be a recurring theme, but something that I hope is going to be a little bit different this coming week. I have a couple guys at the top that I really like. And we really continued our string of hitting a really good bottom of the lineup players, guys under 7K that you need to fill out your lineup if you're going to be taking guys above 10K and even higher up on the salary board. So we're hoping to come back into that again this week, and we hope to continue to recoup a lot of that losses that we had over the past 2 weeks and get back to the form that we had at the Charles Schwab and the RBC Heritage. So if you like what you've been listening to and like kind of the breakdown of the events of the field, please continue to like and subscribe here on YouTube. We really appreciate all the followers that we've gotten and all the likes and all the views, but we need to continue to increase it. I want to be able to reach more people with the data and analysis that I do on a weekly basis. And also, let's get more people working on Twitter as well. I've had a lot of great conversations recently with Twitter users online that are discussing picks for the upcoming week, and I would love to hear feedback from followers on there as well. I also post polls as to what players you like the best, what DraftKings lineups you guys are leaning towards. So I really appreciate all the fan interaction. So please continue to like and subscribe both here to the YouTube channel. Check out my Twitter, which will be linked down below, and also linked down below will be my website. Any of the tools that you like to see that I use on the video today are all going to be up on my website, so make sure you give that a look after you're done with the show and are doing your own research for the upcoming week. So let's get into the Workday Charity Open here at Murfield Village. So as we do every week, we're going to start here on the SRP Picks Twitter page and kind of go through our picks last week and really discover where we went wrong, where we went right, in certain areas. So we'll start with the first the matchup plays and the entire tournament plays that we made for the given week. So obviously matchup plays first. We had Varner over Rogers, and that was the one that hit. Varner had a very good week. He's been really good since coming back. Obviously, a lot of people saw him compete at the Charles Schwab Classic the first week back, but he's just been really consistent with his irons in each of the 4 tournaments since the break. He's going to be back in the field this week. This is a 5-week stretch for him and a lot of these other players, so it'll be interesting to see if he's able to keep that form going. But he played well again, got another top 30 this week at the Rocket Mortgage, and he lines up really well on paper here this week as well, so it'll be interesting to see. Patrick Rogers, not a horrible week in his own right, but relied way too much on the putter as expected. Sungjae M over Fowler failed. M played okay, but once again, those irons are just not where they need to be. Very much of the same story that we saw at the Travelers, where he hit way too many approaches to 25, 30 feet as opposed to the 10 to 12 feet needed for a birdie putt. And he also didn't really putt that well this week. I believe he was around even strokes game putting, but he really lost a lot when it came to hitting those birdie chances. So not being able to score at the correct amount was a big issue, and the big thing that we were projecting for Ricky, which was negative off the tee game, never came to fruition. He actually gained strokes off the tee at this event, which really made it difficult for Sungjae to catch up to him. And then Brian Harman versus Jason Day. We picked against Jason Day. This was not as much a bet for Harman as it was against Jason Day. And Day missed the cut, but unfortunately Harman did as well. So Jason Day really struggling, coming into a tournament that he has a lot of home ties when he came to the States from Australia towards, but his game is just all over the place right now. Bubba Watson, we tried to hit him here on a non-Bubba track at the Rocket Mortgage, and it failed pretty spectacularly, I would say. He wasn't horrible off the tee, which is normally his forte. He's normally pretty good off the tee, was pretty solid this week, gained over a stroke and a half, I believe, in each of the rounds. that he played, but he ended up missing the cut, and it was mainly due to his irons. I mean, he was having a really difficult time getting the ball near to the hole, and when he missed the green, he had a lot of trouble getting up and down, which is normally his problem when he is struggling. It'll be interesting to see how many people go back to him this week at the Workday Charity Open, given the fact that scrambling is going to be a little bit easier than normal years at Murfield Village, but scrambling is still one of the tougher things. So if he's not able to fix that problem, he might have a tough week this week at Well. Also, not really a course he's played well at the past, so this might be a spot where I fade Watson this week. The top 20 bets were Cameron Tringali and Cameron Percy. The Tringali one in particular looked really good going into Sunday when Tringali was tied for 11th coming into that round, but he kind of flamed out on Sunday. Obviously, with these players, they're hit or miss, but going back to Cameron Tringali this week, especially in DK lineups, which we'll talk about, was a good move. And Cameron Percy, great ball striking this week, just couldn't hit enough putts to make the cut. To the DK lineups, we kind of went contrarian starting Reed Watson, and that ended up backfiring in a big way. I talked a lot last week, and you heard me on the show about DeChambeau and how much of a better player he was than the others in the field. But the fact that fading him made a lot more sense given the value of him being 6-1 and 11,700 on DraftKings. I obviously ate my words for that as he straight up won the entire event. So in the future, I plan on not trying to overthink those things and kind of play them a little more straight up as the stats show. Patrick Reed failed miserably last week. Again, really couldn't hit enough irons to be able to set himself up in good spots, and his putter ran pretty flat. I believe he actually lost strokes putting in this tournament, which is really rare for him. So expect him to be back with the putter this week, but until he continues to get the irons to the point where it's going to be possible for him to compete, I would not be looking too highly toward him. Further down the board, we talked about Watson. Hadwin had a great week. Harold Varner was solid. Hadwin continuing to hit irons really, really well and coming to a tournament he's played pretty well at in the past, so he'll be interesting. Harmon obviously struggled. Tringali played well. Matsuyama played really well, especially on Saturday when I believe he shot -7 or -8. Really solid with the irons again and was able to get the putter rolling. When he's able to do that, he's definitely in the top tier of players in the field. We talked about him. Kevin Na withdrew. That back injury is really interesting to see where that's going. Mark Hubba Hubbard played really, really well this past week until he started missing greens. His around the green game and scrambling game is one of the worst on tour, but when it comes to him just being able to take out an iron, hit it on the green, and hit in putts, that's really his game. This week, therefore, probably not going to look toward him. I don't even think he's in. No, he might be in the field, but I'm not going to look toward him as much given the added emphasis on scrambling, but I really think he played well last week and shines well for future events such as Barbasol that he might be even a favorite in. Tom Hoagie was not great this week, couldn't get the putter going, and same thing with Cameron Davis, struggling from a putting standpoint. As we do most weeks, we will start reviewing our upcoming picks for the Workday Open by looking at the field analysis. Obviously, we have a lot of data on what this field looks like for the Memorial Tournament, but not as much for what it's going to look like this week for the Workday. Obviously, bringing in a lot less talented players than normally feature here and making it more like a PGA Tour normal event rather than what it normally is, which is one of the higher end events on the schedule, I think is going to be really difficult for these people this week, especially since they're going to be returning to this same course next week in quote-unquote tougher conditions according to course officials. What they're doing to make this course a little easier this week is that they're slowing down the greens a lot more than they normally would for an upcoming tournament. And they're also lowering the rough from where it is and allowing it to grow out during the week so that by the time the entire cream of the crop comes in next week, we have a lot of guys coming in a week early trying to get a little taste of the course. But by next week, when all of the great players are back in the field, it's going to play a lot tougher than it does this week. I don't know how well they're going to be able to do that, but that is at least the reports coming from Ohio at this point. Things I'm looking at this week. Obviously, shots gained off the tee is major. Last week, that came more through accuracy because there was a lot of short par fours where you had to be on the fairway and in the right half of the fairway in order for you to have a great attacking angle toward the hole. This week, it's more about distance. Most of the par fours that are clocking in this week are coming over 450 yards, between around 450 and 475, which means that a lot of your approaches, which we'll talk about in a second, are coming in from longer ranges. But that also means that you need to gain a lot of shots off the tee. Obviously, DeChambeau, a great example of this, able to drive it up over 330, 340 yards last week on the course multiple times. But this week, we're going to be searching for other players who are able to gain a lot of shots off the tee. Again, you can do it through accuracy, but the approaches are going to be so long that I would rather have a guy who's able to gain a lot of strokes through distance and be able to put himself closer to the hole on his second shot. When it comes to percentage angles for the approaches, there are two ranges that really stick out in particular. Coming into last week, we had looked at the 150 to 175 percentage for the first 3 weeks in a row. Last week at the Rocket Mortgage wasn't as important, as it was more of a long approach or a very, very short approach based on what par 4 you were playing. But this week, 150 to 175 yards is back. At the Memorial Tournament, around 24.5%, or about a quarter of your approach shots, are going to come in from this distance. So we're right back in this medium range angle. Depending on who you are, that's either going to be around a 6 or a 7 iron, or even lower to about an 8 or a 9 if you're a long hitter like John Rahm. But between that cutoff and the 175 to 200 yard cutoff, which ranks first with the Memorial Tournament for the amount of approaches taken from this range, which is over 25% to 26.8%. Those two ranges are going to make up a lot of what I'm looking for second shot golfers this week. So if you're able to hit those longer irons into these greens, it's going to be really, really beneficial. These greens aren't super large, and the scrambling from around these greens are very, very difficult. So being able to hit greens in regulation from these two pristine areas is going to be very, very important this week, or you're going to be able to have to get up and down 10 to 11 times per round, which is not going to be something that you want to do on this course, as we'll see in a second. But as we see here, over 50% of the shots come from these two ranges, and that is due, again, to those longer par 4s. So I'm going to look for guys who can score on those longer par 4s by getting up and down on the green on these approach ranges. The final thing I want to look at this week, I didn't really take it into account as much last week because I knew it was going to be a score fest, but that actually came back to bite me in the butt. I think a lot of my guys were able to put up birdies at times, but were giving things back way too easily with bogeys. If you're able to shoot a bogey-free round, it's a lot easier to, kind of bounce along and, hit in pars, hit a couple birdies here and there, because you're not giving anything back. So I think this week in particular, even though the winning score was minus 19 last year at the Memorial, I think that with this class of players being a little bit worse than what we normally see at the Memorial Tournament and the easier conditions, I think that this is going to lead to probably around the same score, if not a little higher, which means that you can't be giving bogeys back either. And as we see here, scrambling at the Memorial Tournament in the past, 35th out of 42 qualifying courses in the ability to scramble. That means it's really, really difficult to be able to get up and down here. So you're going to be able to need to gain a lot of strokes around the green this week. Maybe not a ton, but you can't kill yourself with chipping like some of the players that we've been playing over the past few days. So we're going to be looking at guys, once again, all-around golfers, very much focused on those longer ranges with your irons, and if you miss the green, able to get up and down from certain angles. So let's get right to the field. We're back again this week with looking at the spreadsheet, going over the different percentile numbers. I've had a lot of questions over the past few weeks about what each of the colors mean. Obviously, the color coordination really makes this kind of stat sheet kind of pop, especially when you are able to understand what the different colors mean so that you can look through each player a lot quicker and really see what they've been doing well, what they've been doing poorly on the tour since the break and this season in general. So the green is top 10 in a quartile percentage. For example, if we sort by shots gained off the tee, 25th percentile, we see top 10 players are in green, top 20 that are not in the top 10 are in yellow, top 50 that are not in the top 10 or 20 are in blue, and then sub 100 in the field in a certain category is red. So by using this analysis, we can kind of go through, see how the players are compared to the field, and look for guys who kind of stand out when it comes to the categories that we just talked about are going to be important this week at Murfield Village. So again, the things I'm kind of looking at this week, an emphasis on ball striking, just like every week. If you're going to be able to get birdie opportunities to win a tournament, you're going to be able to really put yourself ahead of a lot of other guys in the field who are scrambling to get pars. So I put ball striking, which is a combination of off the tee and approach game, at a major emphasis. The other thing that's going to be on this sheet this week, I'm going to kind of go through and kind of do my analysis of where these guys pop off in the given categories. Is it at the course? Is it at since the break? Is it for this entire season, or is it all time? And kind of write that all down and include it in the spreadsheet so that you guys can see where these guys are popping up. Are they going to be guys who the model likes over a certain 50-round sample size? Is it going to be only a 12-round sample size, since the break sample size? And basically from that, you can gather an analysis of how to look into creating your lineups this week and what you're going to buy into. For me in particular, I've been focusing a lot more on since the break and in the 2020 season, given that the COVID 3-month break really threw everything off. Some guys who were on really big heaters came back off the break not playing as well. Some guys came back playing even better. Look at Bryson, obviously peaking going into the COVID break, and since coming out has really been at the top of his game. So I'm going to start at the top this week once again with the above 10K players, which starts with Justin Thomas. Comes out on 11-1 in betting odds. The market a lot better this week than it was last week when it comes to non-inflated odds, but still a lot of the guys at the top are not getting as low the numbers you would expect. But Justin Thomas obviously favored at 11-1, a lot better than the 6-1 we saw in Bryson last week. With so many guys in this field, though, so many big names you see here at the top, Rahm, Cantlay, Koepka, Schauffele, Matsuyama, all guys who have really had success at this course. Cantlay, obviously, the defending champion, just to name one. Justin Thomas, I love. DraftKings, gosh, this is a tough one. He does make a lot of birdies, and obviously, as you can see here, his approach game is off the map. Not only is he top 10 in these categories, but I believe if I sort by approach, yeah, he's top 2 in 50th percentile, top 9, I guess, in shots gained approach, 75th percentile. That's fairly low for me, believe it or not. And also 4th in shots gained approach, 25th percentile. So obviously he's one of the best with the irons that you're going to find in this field. The putting scares me. He's just so streaky with the putter. He's either really, really good or really, really bad. He's not going to need to scramble a lot, but when he does, he's a pretty solid player. I can see myself probably going to him this week, even at the $11,100 price tag. We've gone to him a lot, even when other players like Bryson and Rory were in the field. He's just a really good class player. Now, the question is the off-the-tee game, and you got to look into that since break numbers for that. He's either been, again, really, really good, or a guy who's been spraying off the tee and putting himself in tough spots with his approach, which is not going to be something you're going to be able to do this week, or especially next week when we go through the even tougher Murfield Village conditions. So I think this is going to be a good week for him to kind of get a lot of the kinks out of his game, and I can see him being really live next week. This week I'm tempering expectations a little bit, but probably will still have a taste of him in most lineups. The guy I really like is Jon Rahm, really rounding into form, a great putter of the golf ball, and if these greens are playing slower this week, I can see him picking up a lot more birdies. He's also a pretty solid around the green player. I think that given his size and his ability to hit the ball a long way, that kind of goes overlooked. But if you look at, for example, the 75th percentile around the green play, he can gain up to 2.5 strokes per round when it comes, or per tournament when it comes to his around the green play. So I really like him here. I think at this event it's going to be a much more lining up to what he does well, which is hitting bombs off the tee, and then being able to filter a couple irons in per round. So I like Rahm here, probably a little bit better than Thomas, just because he hits it a little farther off the tee, and you really cannot deviate from hitting far and accurate off the tee here. So I like Rahm a little bit better than Thomas this week, but again, both these guys top of their game. Patrick Cantlay is also really interesting. Coming back after his big break, he played pretty well at the Travelers Championship before taking last week off to prepare for Murfield Village. Great ball striker, as you see at the top. All three of the top guys are all top 10 in ball striking categories in every single quartile. He's great with the irons, much like Justin Thomas. Actually, his iron game is fairly similar to Justin Thomas's, and he's able to gain a little bit more off the tee when it comes to his 75th percentile. So will I have a taste of the defending champion? Do I think he can win here at the Workday Open? Obviously. I like Rahm and Thomas a little better, and if I'm going up to this range, I might find myself trading up to them a little bit more. But Cantlay is probably the most solid play out of all of those guys. So a guy who is really not going to kill any of your lineups by missing a cut, for example. So maybe more in cash games I would side with him, but in tournament play I'm still favoring Rahm and Thomas. Out of the remaining three guys, I'm fading Koepka. Just not enough iron play for me. I feel like he's going to be more live next week. I feel like this is a week where he can kind of, dog it around the course a little bit, kind of get a feel as to what he's going to expect for next week. And then when everyone is back next week and he's able to play with some of the best in the world, that's when he's going to stun the field. This week, obviously still good players at the event, but this is more of a trial and error event for me for him, I think. And until he gets his irons around, I just don't think he's playable at the price tag of 10,400 or able to be bet at, I think 14-1 is the number he's going off at right now. Xander Schauffele, another interesting one to me. Since the break, his putter has been kind of shaky and his irons have as well. Another great off the tee player, though. I believe he ranks out first in this field in 75th percentile. No, second is Cameron Champ, of course. Champ, an interesting guy. We'll get to him a little later. I like Schauffele. Probably not going to have too much of him this week, but good player. Like him a little better than Koepka. Probably a little worse than the guys at the top. And then Hideki Matsuyama. Another great week, but spotty in certain points. The putter is just not there ever, basically, for him. Again, going to gain a ton through approach. One of the best in the field, especially when it comes to 75th percentile in that category. Just doesn't do enough for me with the putter here. Again, around the green, he's also pretty solid, but I'd rather go with Rahm. I just feel like his irons are a little better than Rahm, but his putter's a lot worse. So I'm going to favor guys near the top a little bit more over Hideki. He might find his way into my lineup again just because of his ball striking being so pristine, but I tend to go probably in this range. I'd rank him out Rahm, Thomas, Cantlay, Matsuyama, Schauffele, Koepka. So we spent a lot of time talking about the top of the board, and it's mostly because I think it's really important, especially after a week where the big failures that we had came from that over 10K and 9K ranges. So I really want to be able to get back on the course of being able to pick guys at the top who are going to be able to compete, but are also safe enough plays where I can expect the top 20 out of them without an issue. So now we're going to drop to another higher range, which is between 8.5 and 9.7. So we're going to go from Matt Kuchar to Justin Rose. There's a couple really great plays, I think, in this range. I've heard a lot of touting for Rose this week. The putter hasn't been great this year, which is a little bit of a concern for me. He's coming out putting okay since the break, but hasn't been able to hit enough to be able to put him over the edge. What has been really impressive compared to earlier in the season has been the iron play. It's really returned to form after switching back to his older clubs. And his off-the-tee game is at a point where he's going to be super consistent when it comes to hitting fairways, and his longer irons are actually pretty consistent compared to a couple other guys in this range. Again, not going to be really worried about him next week when it comes to missing the green and needing to scramble. He's one of the better players on tour at that. This week, I'm going to stay a little bit away from him because I think the scoring conditions are going to be a little bit easier. So I'm going to move a little bit farther down the board, especially if I'm taking one of the top three guys of Thomas, Rahm, or Cantlay. This would be a difficult spot to drop to and then have to go even farther down the board when making my picks for my 3rd through 6th players in DK lineup. So I'm not going to have as much Rose this week, but I can understand the hype for him. Victor Hovland, I like the price drop to 9.5. He's been ball striking like a fiend. The around the green game has gotten better, but this will be more interesting to see how he does at a course like this one when around the green game is at a premium. I know a lot of people say that's really an equalizer where, if everyone's missing greens and being able to struggle when it comes to scrambling, then it doesn't really matter if you're bad at it. But Victor Hovland can be really bad at it, we've seen in the past. Obviously, again, since he worked with that coach, has improved during the break session and has come out really playing tour average since the break, but I still need to see a little bit more out of him, and the putter just really hasn't been able to put him over the edge, so at 9.5, I'm going to pass. I'm going to jump back on the Colin Morikawa train, and I know a lot of you who followed me at the Travelers and saw him miss so horribly, the cut, obviously are going to be like, what are you doing? But I'm back on him. Great ball striker. The putting is hit or miss. I know you see a lot of red in those categories, but again, very hit or miss for him. If he's riding hot, he's sinking putts, and even when he's riding hot, he doesn't need to sink putts because, as you can see, top 10 in the field in each of the approach categories. I think that'll continue to stay in form. I know he lost strokes in approach at the Travelers. He took a week off. I think that was probably to just readjust adjust his game. Around the green game, unlike a guy like Hovland, Morikawa can actually get really good around the green at times, so I'm going to be back on him this week. He does enough off the tee for me where he can put himself in a fairway position and be able to approach from 2 ranges that he's actually pretty solid at. Obviously, shots gained approach overall, he's one of the best in the field. Ricky, I'm going away from. Felt like he had a great week last week and maybe is making a turn, but I am not going to be the one jumping ahead of that train. Sung JM, I don't know where his game's at right now when it comes to his approach. He probably should have taken this week off and just came back next week at Murfield. No one would have blamed him, but until he gets the approach and putter game a little bit better, I'm going to go away from him. Pat Reed, the price is super intriguing at $8,800. Just really hasn't had much experience at this course, played well in the past when he has played here. His game doesn't really line up for here, though, given his off-the-tee game being a little bit subpar compared to the guys around him. I'm probably going to stay away. Mark Leishman is another guy I like again here. I liked him at the Travelers, played really well coming into the weekend, was tied for 4th, and then just completely fell off the map. He's just really blowing himself out of tournaments, very much like another guy we'll talk about a little bit farther down the board. But I really like his approach game numbers. Very much Morikawa-like in that way. Obviously, the off the tee game is not as good as Morikawa. His approach game not as good upper end as Morikawa. I think he's a lot more of a consistent approach player. But his around the green game is going to be better at its top end, and also his putter when it's fire is going off. Definitely a possible sneaky first round leader play. I think he's coming in at 60-1 in that category. But a guy that can really pop up early and often in tournaments, and I expect to see the same thing this week. Jordan Spieth, still a big fade for me. I always fade Jordan Spieth just because he gains so much from putting in around the green play. And at 8,600, you can get better guys from around him. Leishman, Reed, even the guy below him, Kuchar, even though I don't like Kuchar this week either. His stat line's just very subpar, and he's the kind of guy who I really like at a grinder event at around 7,300, so namely majors, rather than an event this week when you're going to have to put up a score of minus 19 or minus 15, for example, to be in the top 10. So fading Kuchar, fading Spieth. In this range, probably I'm going to go with Morikawa, then going to probably drop to Leishman before going back to probably Hovland and Reed again this week. So those are going to be my plays from those range. So now we'll drop to the 8.5 to 7K range. And this is a really important one that we've been actually doing a very good job at hitting over the past few weeks. So that goes from Mackenzie Hughes all the way up to Joaquin Niemann. We just talked about Matt Kuchar, obviously. So I think this range is really important because, like I said, if you're going to pick a guy at the top like Cantlay, Thomas, or Rahm, and this is a little bit of a roster construction tip, I guess, you're most likely going to want to drop to the high 8s or low 9s to pick your next player, and then you're going to want to immediately drop into this range, which is high 8s if you're lucky, high 7s probably more likely, and then mid to lower 7s as well to round out your lineup. So it's really important that you hit on guys at this range. Joaquin Niemann, love him this week. Great off the tee, solid through approaches, is a guy that we've already seen pop up a few times since the break. Obviously at the RBC Heritage played really well. My big concern is that we really haven't seen him a ton at higher events. His skill set lines up as a player who kind of all around, so he can kind of do it all and really should be able to fill out entire events where shots gained total are really, really important, but really hasn't shown it yet. I think this is kind of a breakout week for him. 8,400 is kind of a steep price for a young player who hasn't accomplished a ton in his career, but I'm going to go to him this week. I think that he's going to be a little bit of a benefit for you, especially given his great iron play as of late. Speaking of great iron play, we have Gary Woodland, who has gained, I believe, second on tour since the break in shots gained approach. How has he not been able to be higher in tournaments when shots gained approach is very, very important? It's the around the green game. It's the fact that he has, I think, triple bogeyed now in 3 consecutive tournaments, at least one hole, which is nuts. He also, despite the fact he has been running hot with his putter, has been horrible around the greens. His scrambling has been really, really bad. When he has missed greens or he's missed fairways, he's gotten into a lot of trouble, as we've seen. So, Gary, this week, probably going to have a touch of him just because he's a great ball striker, and he's also obviously a major winner, so you got to give him a look at an event like this one that's going to play a little more difficult, but not going to be completely on board with him. I'd rather go with Joaquin Niemann, who's shown a little bit better around the green play as of late. Adam Hadwin, great last week. Probably be back on him for this event, mostly because I'll fade him next week when the conditions get tougher. His putter has been red hot recently, and if he's able to dial in the irons like he did last week, I think at 8,200 he's a great play. So again, first three guys from the range, not really super interesting takes, but I really like all three of them. Matthew Wolff, complete fade for me. He did what he needed to do last week. Overall, doesn't really game with his approaches as much as he did last week. Off the tee game is going to be solid, but I don't know about the emotional letdown of having lost an event that you were up by 3 strokes coming into the final round on. Bubba Watson, I'm going to fade. Not really a Bubba Watson track, so I learned my lesson last week. I'm going to go away from him. Again, the off-the-tee game is there, and I think that should be important at the field this week, but the around the green the game is so bad that I think that's really going to cost him at an event like this one. So fading Bubba. Matthew Fitzpatrick, a full fade for me as well. Doesn't ball strike nearly as much as I need to be good at this event. Guys from the high 7K range that I like. So to round out, the low 8Ks, I'd probably say Neiman, Woodland, Hadwin are my top 3 in no particular order. If I had to order it, probably would go Neiman, Woodland, Hadwin, just in the same order as the pricing. But I'm okay with anyone. They're all pretty interchangeable for me. Fitzpatrick, full fade, that's where we were. Guys from the high 7K range, so 7.5 and higher that I'm really looking at, and then other guys that I'm kind of fading. I've heard a lot of touting for Ben On this week. Fine. I mean, he's a great tee to green player. His putting leaves a lot to be aspired, and despite the fact that this event doesn't really have a huge 1-putt to 3-putt split, the greens, especially next week, are normally notoriously pretty difficult to score on. So when it comes to Ben On, and I don't love him at this event, but I can understand the support for him. Louis Oosthuizen in complete fade until he gets his game back. He's much a better player than guys around him, or at least name value-wise, but his game's all over the place right now. As you see, his irons and around the green game have been really, really bad. Scotty Scheffler, not for me this week. Shot a +7 first round where he was in dead last at the Rocket Mortgage Classic. Followed that up with a -7. The volatility here is not going to pay off. You're not going to be able to shoot -7 at this course. So full fade for me. Kevin Streelman's an interesting one in this range, 7,800. Great recent form, obviously, and really pops off when it comes to ball striking and the appropriate approach ranges, which is obviously something I'm looking for. So I might be targeting him. Phil, complete fade for me. Other guys in this range I like. Joel Dahman, 7.7. Obviously a great iron player and a guy who can get hot with the putter, but he's not notoriously a great one. Also pretty good off the tee, pretty solid. So he's going to be able to help you, especially in that 50 percentile category. You see him top 10 in the field in both off the tee, approach, and in ball striking. So I really like him this week. I think 7,700 is a fair price for him. Jason Day's a fade. Corey Connors, again, another guy, great ball striker. He'll be a play. Obviously didn't play great last time out at the Travelers, but took a week off, so I think that the fatigue issue is going to go away. I think he'll be back to ball striking this week, and at an event where putting is going to be difficult for everyone, I think that this is an event he could pop off at. And then I'm going back to my guy, HV3. Great last week, and I think he'll be great again this week. Just plays really, really well wherever he goes right now. Has some solid course history, nothing great, but pretty acceptable. Since the break, top 5 in the tour and approach. So yeah, I'm really back on him this week. Obviously, a great off the tee player overall as well. The putter really failed him last week and has failed him overall in 2020. But if he's able to roll in a couple putts, he could be very live again this week. And at 7,500, really didn't increase his price even after a solid finish. So I'm back on HV3. So out of the guys in the high 7K range, if I had to order them, I'd probably go Connors, just because his top end is just so high. Varner, and then Joel Dahman. And then guys I'm fading, Oosthuizen, Day, just the name, Phil, just the name players that I think that a lot of people might gravitate toward if you're not used to playing DraftKings or looking at the stats. Dropping down a level, we'll talk about the guys that you're going to be using to fill out your lineups this week. So guys between 7,400 and the minimum of 6,000, and guys who you're going to have to populate your lineup with. I think basically every single lineup I've created thus far, I've had at least 2 guys in this range. So people who try to avoid this range with a passion are not taking guys with high enough win equity, or are not taking guys who notoriously finish at the top of the leaderboard. So since I'm going to be pounding that upper range of players, I'm going to have to drop to this range, if not twice, maybe even 3 times in some lineups. So I really put an emphasis on focusing on what guys from here are going to be able to pop off. Guys I like, so I'm just going to roll down the board here. Russell Henley has been red hot with the irons recently. Played really well at the Travelers. Didn't play last week, which was kind of a surprise. Overall, all time, he's actually been a pretty good off-the-tee player and was pretty good in the past when he's played at this event off the tee. When it comes to some of the other things he wasn't as good at when he played at this event in the past, but I think that this week with the decreased difficulty, I think he's definitely live, especially if he keeps those irons working at the consistency that they are. If you look at his stat line, nothing's really going to hurt you except maybe his putting, but again, putting's really difficult for everyone at this course, so if he can get those irons hot, he could be in a really good position to be near the top of the leaderboard, especially to start this tournament off. Cameron Tringali, I love 7,300 at this event. Kind of scary. Gained a lot of strokes last week. Not a really great off-the-tee player, which kind of concerns me for this event, but I'll probably have a sprinkle of him as well. I favor Henley over him at 7,300, but definitely a guy you got to look at. Played really well last week, and he's just getting better as he returns to form. Ryan Palmer, we saw him pop up at the RBC Heritage. Good player, ball striker wise, not great putting or around the green, but again, is that going to really matter if everyone's doing bad at it? So I like Ryan Palmer, 7,200, a little bit more of a name than I normally like going to because I think a lot of people gravitate toward a guy like him, but I'm on him this week. I really think he's got top of the leaderboard value at a really lower price. Gonna fade Matt Wallace. Just the irons are all over the place. Emiliano Grillo, good, but the top-end approach form and off-the-tee form is kind of losing for me. He actually was okay putting last week, which was the reason I'm a little concerned that he only finished, I believe, sub 40 when it came to his final finishing position. So until he gets that top-end potential back, I'm going to stay away from him just because his blow-up is so mighty when it does happen. Other guys I'm going to probably drop a little farther down the board and go with a guy like Luke List. This is an event that List could pop up, can get really hot with the irons, and he's obviously always a great off-the-tee player. The putter is really, really bad. But recently he hasn't been as bad. He's been a little bit closer to what we expect. Obviously last week was a little bit of a return to form, but aside that from the 1 to 2 other tournaments he had played since being back from the break, he had been okay. Obviously won an event since being back from break on the Korn Ferry Tour, so I think that at 7,000 he could be a really interesting banger buck play. Definitely more of a tournament play for me just because of his high-end upside, but is a guy I'll definitely gravitate toward when playing a couple Millie Maker lineups. Other guys that I'm looking at in this range, Kyle Stanley, great with the irons. Again, another guy who's played pretty well here in the past. So I'm definitely giving him 1 or 2 glances. Other guys, if we move farther down the board, I'm going back to Tom Hoge. Again, he burned a lot of people, and given the fact that he doesn't have huge name value, I think people will fade away from him. His around the green game is fairly bad, which is probably a concern. But again, from this range, you're looking for a guy to really get hot and move up the leaderboard after making the cut. So if I'm looking for a guy to move up in a tournament, I'm probably going to grab Hoge. If not, and I'm playing a cash game lineup, or I want a guy safer down in this range, I'll drop down to Jim Furyk. The off-the-tee game definitely scares me at this event where you need to be a little bit longer. But Furyk hits good long irons, surprisingly. He actually popped up in both the 150 to 175 and 175 to 200 yard ranges. For him, it might be a little bit more like over 200 on a lot of these par 4 approaches, but he's a solid player with the long irons, gains on approach in almost every single tournament he plays in, and is not going to kill you around the greens. So, again, kind of a bang or more of a safe play. I'd go with either Hoge or Jim Furyk at 6,900. Dropping a little bit more, Matthew Neesmith really pops up in these ranges as well, which shouldn't surprise you given the fact that these longer approaches into par 4s really popped up at the RBC Heritage where he played really, really well. Obviously, that was more of a home course factor for him, but he can also get really hot with the putter at certain events. So if he's able to do that again this week at 6,800, he's really, really great value. Working further down the board, Danny Lee can get hot for first round leader bets. Probably not a DraftKings play for me. If we look even down to 6,600, Adam Long has been playing really good with his irons as of late. Don't really know if this is the course for him, but he can also gain a fair amount off the tee. Not going to kill you with his off the tee play, and he can also get really hot with the putter. So I'm looking, guys, this week, especially down in this range, that's something that we've missed, which is really just hot putter players who come out and have a great week. Adam Long can do just that. Other guys down here, Graham McDowell, The off the tee though kind of actually I'll say no to Graham McDowell. The off the tee game kind of scares me for him. Sun Kang has been playing great approach shots, but he's just not the kind of player I play. Henrik Norlander's interesting if you're going to continue to ride his ball striking form. He's been great when it comes to his irons in particular, and really pops off from both of the ranges that are going to be required this week. I'm probably not going to go with him just because if he gets in trouble, he could be putting up double bogey numbers as opposed to the normal bogey numbers if you miss. So I'm going to probably stay away from him. I'll probably have a little bit of a taste of Chesson Hadley. Missed the cut last week, which dropped his salary all the way down to $6,500. And I might take a few chances just because of his bang potential. He's a guy who can really finish highly in a field, given the fact that, as you see, he's top 20 in this field at a very low price in shots gained approach 50th percentile. Going down further, if you have to drop this far, Charles Schwartzel has been great with both the irons and the putting, but his off the tee and around the green games have been really, really bad. Probably not for me, but if you are into that kind of play, go ahead, be my guest. Stuart Sink continues to do the same kind of thing. Cameron Percy still pops up with the irons. Probably not for me at this course, given the fact that you also need to be good off the tee. Dropping down even farther, there's no one I really like down in this range. So if I'm going to start with budget plays from 7,400 and below, guys I like, I'll probably be back on Hubbard. Probably be on Russell Henley at 7,300. I'll go back to Luke List at 7,000. Dropping further down, Hoagie, Furyk, Neesmith. Probably Long, and a dash of Henrik Norlander and Chesson Hadley. So those are different guys I can play. Obviously, ton of guys in this range. So if there's anyone I didn't mention that you would like me to talk about, hit me up on Twitter, hit me up in the comments below this page, and I'll send you out my opinion on them. But in this range of 7,400 and below, if you have to go with three of these guys, I'd say Henley from 7,300, Furyk, more of a cash game play, at 6,900, and then Matthew Neesmith at 6,800. Thanks so much for tuning in today to the SRP Picks YouTube channel to check out my picks and projections for the upcoming Workday Charity Open here at Murfield Village in Dublin, Ohio. We're going to be here 2 weeks, so better get used to the course. Obviously, par 72, so it's going to be really fun seeing how the guys score on the par 5s. I know last week I was really interested when Matthew Wolff hit it to 14 feet on 17 to go for the eagle and keep himself in contention against Bryson DeChambeau. Obviously, it flipped the other way where DeChambeau hit a ball to 3 feet, tapped in for birdie, and Matthew Wolff ended up missing his 14-foot putt and tapping in for birdie as well, which did not give him enough of a chance to catch Bryson on 18. But I really had fun with that. I think that this week is going to be also a really great event where it's going to prioritize a little bit more of the technical side of golf when it comes to your around the green play, along with the normal ball striking and scoring capabilities that these players have. I'll leave you on this page. I think my pick to win this week, as I kind of talked about at the top, my favorite top-end player, Jon Rahm. A little bit farther down the board, I'll take a couple other shots that you'll be able to see on my Twitter, linked in below, at SRP Picks. So that'll be linked, obviously, in the description. You can go down there. Please give me a like and a follow on there, as well, as that is a place where I like to have a lot of conversations with Twitter users in the upcoming week coming into the event, so that we can kind of give you a whole different view on how different people are looking at this tournament. I think it's really important when you're making these golf picks to really look at what people in the industry are saying, kind of give you different facts, different things to look at. So I encourage you to check me out on Twitter at SRP Picks, where I have a lot of these conversations with other users. Please also like and subscribe here. I really want to expand the channel. We're up to 4 subscribers, which isn't great, 4 weeks, 4 subscribers, but I'm very optimistic about the way this is going. This is super fun for me, and I hope it is super fun for you over the past few weeks, listening in and taking some great picks. And regardless of the fact that, last 2 weeks haven't been as great, first 2 weeks were amazing, obviously. We've had guys in round 4, putting you in the sweat position, giving you some great golf to watch. So I've had really a lot of fun doing it. Hopefully get some comments down below. Tell me who your favorite plays are this week. Tell me guys who I didn't really address as much that you would like me to go over, and I would really love to do that. Thanks for listening in again this week. We'll be back next week with a similar yet probably shorter video, given the fact that we're back at the same course at the Memorial Tournament. where we'll kind of go through a couple different things as well. I'm also looking to release, obviously, MLB coming back, so I'm working on releasing that data on the website. Once again, the website link below. And I'm also looking to release some data optimizer lineups. So I've been using an optimizer for my lineups over the past few weeks in DraftKings. If you would like me to release that, please leave a like on the video and comment that down below, or comment on Twitter. And I'll be able to release for you kind of what I do with the lineup optimization, and maybe even release for you guys that tool so that you guys can create lineups for the upcoming week. Thank you so much for listening in today, and look forward to seeing you guys back on the channel next week, and hope you guys have a great week of making picks here at the Workday Charity Open.